Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of SF Ranked, and this time we are going to be talking about something that I'm sure a lot of you are doing right now. So I know a lot of us have been staying indoors, trying to find activities to keep us occupied, which kind of got me thinking about what are the best San Francisco-based video games. Now you may or may not know this about me, but I actually used to work in games media, which means I used to make videos about video games, reviews, documentaries, goofy stuff. But more important than my knowledge for video games is how well they depict San Francisco. So I'll be ranking 10 of them here based on three things. One, does it have the geography and visual accuracy of San Francisco? You know, we don't want the Golden Gate Bridge across the street from the ferry building. That's just not going to work. Number two is the feel of the game. When I'm playing it, do I feel like I am being represented as a San Franciscan? Or for somebody who isn't from San Francisco, will they get the feeling of what it's like to live here? And three, is the game fun to play? Simple as that. Okay, so I guess we're going to start off with a game that is not fun to play. I'll just be upfront with you. And it's Dirty Harry from 1990 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So this is a side-scroller based on the Clint Eastwood movie of the same name. It's from 1990, and I still think it could have done a lot better in the graphics department. You got a nice rendering of Clint Eastwood as the title screen, but basically everything else is just rundown apartment buildings and trashed streets. And for some reason, there's a lot of fights going on in the sewers, so not a whole lot of San Francisco in there. Now, there is a boss fight on Alcatraz at the very end, and I think that's the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm not quite sure. It's just orange steel. But out of all the games on this list, it's probably the worst portrayal, visually at least. As for the feel of the game, I don't really know how well it represents San Franciscans. Maybe if I lived in the Tenderloin or if I frequented the sewers a little bit more, but nothing that really stands out as saying, this is what San Francisco is all about. Fun, I mean, aside from being just a basic side-scroller where you can kick and punch dudes and apparently shoot them in the head, yeah, nothing really special about this one. However, I will say that shooting that Magnum is pretty satisfying looking. So next up is Nancy Drew Message in a Haunted Mansion, a point-and-click detective game for the PC. I forget what year this was, but basically what you're doing is you're solving in this old Victorian mansion in San Francisco. But that's kind of all you see of it. You don't really ever go outside. There's this one photo of the Golden Gate Bridge in the beginning of the game. That's it. This could take place anywhere else. But I think the plot of this game is kind of where it pulls ahead of Dirty Harry, on this list at least. So as the story goes, you are helping Nancy Drew's housekeeper's friend, who is currently in the process of turning this super old fancy Victorian mansion into a bed and breakfast. So essentially what you're doing is you're contributing to the gentrification of the city by way of standing for an Airbnb unit. San Francisco. Also, according to the Wikipedia entry, it says, strange accidents are slowing down the renovation, and Nancy is trying to figure out who or what is trying to scare everyone away. Nancy suspects that there is another force at work. Greed. So I guess by way of dubious house renovations and money-hungry landlords, this game certainly does make you feel like you're in San Francisco. But is it fun? I mean, I've played a lot of point-and-clicks in my time. If you know anything about them, it looks pretty close to King's Quest VII and that kind of style of game where the 3D started coming in and kind of getting in the way of puzzles because of the novelty. I'll tell you what, I'll take Grim Fandango or King's Quest VI over this any day. All right, next is Homefront, which is a first-person shooter based in the near future world. And this game, unlike a lot of the other games on this list, does not actually take place in San Francisco, but it does feature a prominent San Francisco scene towards the end of the game. So as the plot goes, North Korea has become an actual worldwide threat, and the US encounters a financial crisis and a nationwide epidemic. And is this game fiction and the game ends with a showdown in San Francisco. Now, as far as the look goes, I would say it's pretty straightforward. You do get some, good shots of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's kind of exciting and things are collapsing and you're shooting stuff. You start out at sea level and then you get to climb up to the span of the bridge and then you get to man a tank, shoot some bad guys. The game ends. Spoiler alert. But as far as the look of the game, I feel like it's, I don't know, it just seems a little bland. I'm not the biggest fan of these military realistic shooters. This finale doesn't really give you a sense for what it's like to be living in San Francisco. I mean, we are not at war at this time and there's no pileups full of cars and trash and rubbish on the bridge itself. And by all accounts, this game is pretty decent. You know, it's not my cup of tea since I'm not really that into, you know, these kinds of shooters. But it does have a 70 on Metacritic, which is pretty decent. And if you're looking for more of a realistic take on San Francisco and you love these military type shooters, by all means, go for it. All right, so next on this list is SF Rush and SF Rush 2049. If you've been in an arcade within the last 20 years or so, you most definitely have seen this machine there. And in the original, there are a ton of great racetracks that you can see different landmarks in San Francisco. So you can see the Great Highway and windmills. You're passing by all these muni buses. I feel like this is the only game on this list that has the Conservatory of Flowers in it at all. However, this game doesn't really give you a sense of what it's like to live here. I mean, you're zooming past everything so quickly, going 150 miles an hour all on the Golden Gate Bridge, and you tend not to think about what it's like in the city at that speed. But is it fun? Yes, hell yeah. In the 90s when this game came out, it was basically the only way for us to experience driving in our city. Yeah, there were racing games, but nothing felt as exciting or as satisfying as clearing a huge jump and like landing in front of the ferry building and racing off. All right, so next we have Cisco Heat, which is another racing game. And if you've ever played Outrun, the old Sega game, it looks basically the same because it was made by former Sega developers. But instead of a red sports car, you are racing police cars through the streets of San Francisco for the National Championship Police Car Steeplechase. How did they even set up this competition? The graphics are bright and colorful, and there are landmarks such as Lombard Street that are easily identifiable. And I like how they actually threw in the street names as you're making your way around corners. They help you guide your way through the city in a very accurate manner, which is kind of surprising for the time. But while it is a great looking game, you don't really get a sense for the city. This is kind of the trend, I guess, for really fast racing games that take place in San Francisco because everything just goes by in a blur. I mean, I guess if you were a police officer and you're typically going down Geary at like 80 miles an hour, you might be able to identify with this, but we're not the biggest on crime, so zooming through the city isn't really the most relatable thing. But this game is fun. It's basically Outrun, which was one of the best arcade racers of its generation, so it's hard for it not to be enjoyable. I think it's pretty exciting enough to make it through a race, seeing all the sights, going down Lombard Street in a cop car, going 270 kilometers an hour. Also, can we just put up the poster on the screen for a little bit? I don't know why, but this poster just kind of, I think it might be the pun. Get ready for one San Frantastic ride. Actually would really love to have one of these arcade cabinets. That's my goal when I get a house. I'll just have a bunch of these Cisco Heat machines in the garage. All right, so next one is a little bit more recent, and it's Driver San Francisco. There actually are a lot of driving games on this list. This game is a pretty faithful recreation of San Francisco. It's not super exciting, I'll say that, but I think you'll find most of your landmarks in the city. You can drive anywhere you want, you can see all the sights you want, but the only thing is that you actually cannot get out of your car. You are only driving. You're always seeing things from the road and from kind of far away, which I feel like hurts its ranking. So does this game make you feel like a San Franciscan? Yeah, kind of actually. So the main mechanic of this game is that you can drive your car and then you can go up into the air and you can teleport to any car you want in the city. And I think that switching from car to car really does bring out that typical San Francisco urge to want to get the hell out of traffic. Basically, it's like a Bay Area commuter's pipe dream, so it gets points for that. But is this fun? Yeah, I think it's all right. I personally never finished the game. I think the story wasn't all that to write home about, but it's also got one of the more interesting mechanics in any open world game, so props to you, Driver San Francisco. So next we have a pretty good one, which is Watch Dogs 2. Now this game came out a couple years ago from Ubisoft, and it's maybe the most faithful or at least comprehensive recreation of San Francisco in a game. So Ubisoft actually does have an office here in San Francisco, which I guess would have been advantageous had they actually made the game here, but I believe it was made in Montreal. But this game does look fantastic. They have pretty much gotten down all these locations, all these different landmarks and spots in the city that people know. The Castro Theater, AT&T Park, you have Fisherman's Wharf, you have all the hills that you can climb up in your car. And that's great and all, you have all these landmarks from the eastern side of the city, but if you look at the map, There is a lot to be desired. There's no Richmond district. Golden Gate Park is a square for some reason. The Painted Ladies are basically 4 blocks away from the beach. So it looks like they took downtown and inflated it to about half the size of the city, which is okay. They got most of it right. I'm not going to dock them for that. I just wish there was more representation for the outside lands. As far as the feel of the game, I think it does work pretty well in this modern time. You know, it touches on a lot of themes that are really prevalent nowadays. So the main character, basically you play as a hacktivist, not unlike Anonymous, the famed group, using technology to bring down this evil mass surveillance corporation. Pretty much all the NPCs in this game are glued to their phones, so I guess it's a pretty authentic representation and portrayal of modern San Francisco. But is it fun? You know, I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of Ubisoft games, particularly their open world ones, because there's so many things to do, and not in a good way. There's so many icons, there's so many waypoint markers littering the UI everywhere. They can get kind of exhausting. Less is more. Next one is GTA San Andreas. This is Rockstar Games' first attempt at portraying the West Coast in their Grand Theft Auto games, and one of the cities is called San Fierro, which is their somewhat faithful recreation of San Francisco. It's got the Golden Gate Bridge, you got Haight-Ashbury, you have the Ferry Building, Sutro Tower. Things are kind of in the places that they should be. And I think this is one of the most interesting additions on this list, just because this game takes place in 1992. So there are actually some references to the Loma Prieta earthquake from 1989, including this section of the freeway right here. You don't really see that in any San Francisco game nowadays. As for the feel and how it makes you feel like a San Franciscan, I mean, unless rocket launchers and gang violence are your bread and butter, it's not really that representative of life here in the city. But then again, this is a fictionalized version of San Francisco. So for example, the names are different. Instead of the Transamerican Pyramid, it's just called the Big Pointy Building. Instead of Castro, it's called Queens. Lombard Street is apparently Windy Street. And Pier 39 is Pier 69. But of course, like I said, this game is fun. GTA has never not been fun, and this is also one of the very first games that let you freely roam San Francisco, albeit a slightly distorted version. Alright, you're probably wondering what number 1 is, right? Number 1 is Manhunter 2, San Francisco. So this one is an old adventure / arcade game by Sierra, who are the makers of some of the best point-and-click adventure games of all time. King's Quest, Police Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, Gabriel Knight, the list goes on. But for Manhunter, this game takes place during a post-apocalyptic alien invasion, and let me tell you right now, despite this game coming out in 1990, it's probably the most accurate portrayal of San Francisco ever made. If you take a look at the map, it's incredibly accurate. Things are where they should be, and there are probably more landmarks featured in this game than some of the other detailed modern games. And they are all recognizable, even though it's very pixely. You can make out Ghirardelli, you can make out Chinatown, you can make out Hyde Street Pier. You have Broadway Street here. Like, what other game has the San Francisco strip clubs? Now, obviously, this game is not going to make you feel like you're in San Francisco right now, just because we are not going through an alien invasion. But I definitely think this game is fun. Now, it does have some quirks because it's like this hybrid point and click an arcade game. So I think it's a little bit harder of a sell for people that didn't really grow up with these games or have them in their life, you know, at an early age. But because it has the most accurate map of any San Francisco video game, it has some of the weirdest shit going on in it. It represents the city in a way that no other game has really done thus far. Not to mention there are some really creepy man-rat fusion hybrid creatures in the game. So if you're into something a little bit different, a little offbeat, and want to still see the city in a very accurate way, play this game. Okay, so those are the 9 best, in my opinion, the 9 best San Francisco-based games of all time. Now, I'll leave a link down below so you can check out Wikipedia's full list of San Francisco-based video games, and also for some of the older games on this list, I'm going to leave a link down below in the description to where you can actually play them on the Internet Archive. I mentioned it in my last video, but you can actually play a lot of these older arcade and DOS and Windows games on the Internet Archive in your browser for free. So check those out. Also, if you could leave a comment telling me if you agree with this list at all, or if you have a game based in San Francisco that you think was probably better than Manhunter 2. I'm sure a lot of you will have opinions on this, but let me know in the comments. I'm excited to read them. And also, if you guys could subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like this video, doing all those things will really help me grow this channel and allow me to do more of these videos. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of SF Ranked. Keep playing video games, and I'll see you at the next spot.